They think that they can escape from the plight that they give to us, but they can't. Evil is self-destructive.
Friends of the Court, a weekly series on legal matters. We live in a world of laws. Get your foundation on LiveOne.tv. Nancy Pelosi's husband was arrested for DWI last night after he was involved in a car accident. The other driver was allowed to go home.
That news did not make it to me, and I can understand why, because Nancy Pelosi's husband is one of the privileged few who can get away with anything. When somebody's driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs and causes an accident which results in someone being hurt or killed, then the seriousness of the crime is escalated. When somebody takes a drink and gets behind the wheel, they didn't mean for such a thing like that to happen, but it did happen. And what they did have the option of doing was before they got behind that wheel, they could have found another way to go where they were going instead of driving under the influence. And then once they have driven under the influence, they're responsible for the action, even though it's not their intent. But that's the way it goes. You know, the chain of custody for evidence is another thing. I don't know if you know what the term chain of custody means. Who had custody of the evidence? And the question as to whether or not the evidence has been debauched is answered by an examination of the chain of custody. If somebody seizes a drug, for instance, a policeman on the scene seizes a drug, and then he takes it to the police station and turns it into an evidence locker, the person who is running the evidence locker signs off for having received it. And then it goes in there, and if somebody else gets it out, he signs it out and signs it back in again. And they have videos that supervise all that kind of stuff to make sure that nobody has switched it with anything or contaminated it with any concept. For law enforcement is to trace the chain of custody of a piece of evidence. And in order to introduce evidence into a court of law, you have to have what's called foundation.
We're listening to another great interview with John Perna. John is an author, speaker, and founder of the Americanist Bookstore, a source of books and merchandise for people who care about the USA. And now back to our broadcast.
Foundation is evidence about the evidence. In other words, what is the evidence that shows that this evidence is authentic and relevant, that it demonstrates something that is a question that's in dispute in this case? That the average person who thinks they have evidence, when they get into court, they find out they don't have evidence because what they thought was evidence was not evidence. The evidence is something that has to be proving a fact, not creating a question, but answering a question. And there are many pieces of information that create questions, but they do not answer questions.
Friends of the Court, a weekly series on legal matters. We live in a world of laws. Get your foundation on LiveOne.tv.